So init, we said, is a method because that function is a property of an object. So to call another method on that object, we need some way to refer to the current object. I don't need to know that it's called people factory. I could change the name of this variable without impacting my code as long as I do this the right way. So from inside a method of that object, I want a way to refer to that object. Luckily, the keyword this usually does that for us. So if we just change this to this.handleSubmit, hopefully we move past that particular error. We'll have more errors, but let's just fix them one at a time. Because handleSubmit, remember, is right here on the very same object. So we're hoping that that works. We can just refer to that object as this. Refresh the page. Okay. That error went away. Does anything happen when we submit the form? Now render color is not defined. Okay. I know what was happening with our block that should have prevented global variables. So here's the answer to that puzzle. We gave person form an ID. So the browser is automatically creating a global variable with the name of that ID. So we couldn't get to our variable that we had explicitly named person form with const. But there's still a global variable present just because we used an ID. So that's kind of a side effect of giving something an ID.
So IDs are named HTML elements will have a global created in that.
Yeah. So just yeah, if we have a variable named that, then it'll use that variable. But that's there. So we're kind of benefiting from this side effect here as well. And we don't want to rely on a side effect. So person form, that's let's just change this to form or the form or something just to make this point. If we change this to the form, instead of giving it the same name as the ID, now we're still finding it by ID with query selector. We didn't change the ID. We just changed how we're referring to it within people factory. Now we should get an error. The form is not defined on line 5. So how do we change this line to get to it? This dot the form. So the form is a property of people factory. So since it's another property of the same object we're currently working in, we can get to that object with this. This refers to the object. And we know that that object dot the form would be this. Make sense? Now, it'd be really cool, for the sake of reusability, if this could be any form on the page, and it's up to the person using our library to determine which one. So let's use a little trick to do that. Here's what I mean. What if we don't have this property on our object at all? And instead, when you call init, you tell it the selector for identifying your form. So we just pass in form hash person form as a parameter to init. And then inside init, we'll expect an argument now. We'll call it form selector. Then we can say const f or the form or whatever you want to call it equals document dot query selector, whatever selector they passed in. And then whatever that happens to be, that's what we're going to add the event listener to. You see how this helps reusability? We don't hard code in the ID of that DOM element. We just allow someone to pass in a selector for finding that form. So if we change the HTML, we don't have to change this object. We just have to change the way we're calling init. We'll see lots more examples of this if it's not quite clicking just yet. But by hard coding that in, our people factory object, it becomes inflexible. And if we change our HTML, we're going to break it. So we're just trying to make it a tiny bit more flexible. So if we do this, we should again not have that same error. Let's see what happens when we submit it now. Now render colors not defined on line 46. So we called init, which ran add event listener. So when we submitted the form, this .handle submit ran. So let's look at handle submit. Here it is. Inside there on line 46, we call render color, but it can't find render color. What about this .render color? And here's where things get weird. They weren't weird yet, right? Everything made perfect sense all week until this moment. Now what happens? This .render color is not a function either. What gives? We're going to have to take a closer look at how this actually works. Similar to that kind of unfortunate, very quick look that we took yesterday. The value of this isn't based necessarily on where in the code your function lives. It's how it's called, how it's invoked. I'm going to start a new video when we talk about these details, just so there's a quick place to refer back to it.